So you've already heard about soul splitting. This is the last installment of this psychic reading where I learned from Spirit that my ex-husband Jim was actually an extremely violent man while he was a cop, and he did some really terrible things. Stay seated for the following video, part 28D, when we close out this very impactful reading with the talented Peter.
And I'm Sarah Wilder. Thank you for being here. Let's continue the reading. Jim's retirement from law enforcement marked the day he forfeited being that version of himself. The cop persona and the cowboy took over. My higher self said that the cop was his entire identity, and without it, he just dissolved. She mentioned that the year before Jim's official on paper retirement was when he had become the cowboy. And this is major. So at that point, Peter decided to read Jim's energy, to tap in to what Jim's doing and how he's feeling in that moment when I'm sitting in California and Peter and Jim are both in Utah. He wanted to see how Jim was handling my departure. Peter was taken aback, though, by how much darker Jim's energy had become since our last reading 2 years earlier. Peter told me that Jim's descent into ever darkening energy is going to continue to deepen and get worse. But reassuringly, my higher self said that physically, I will be safe. Our time was not yet over, so I was able to ask Spirit to offer any further details of what happened on that dark day, on Father's Day. And my higher self fielded this question by saying, Jim thought to himself that day that he felt disgusting. She added that despite the experiences I had while being married to Jim, when I saw signs years earlier that he was a bad person, and in addition to everything I had learned about him through Spirit, that my ability to employ deep denial allowed me to stay married to Jim. Continuing, my higher self told me that Jim not only despises and disgusts himself, but he also finds his parents and siblings and others absolutely disgusting as well. She gave an example of those times when I've heard Jim say awful things, for example, like in a road rage type of moment, pointing out that Jim actually, when he speaks, he means everything he's saying, unlike other people for whom the rants are just hyperbole, just empty ranting. So circling back to the day constantly in question, Father's Day 2022, my higher self said that Jim did have very dark thoughts toward me that day, but not to hurt or attack me initially. So as another example, my higher self said that if Jim is bothered by something or someone, he'll wish it not to be there, which was the case on that day. And then the dark entity nearly fulfilled Jim's wishes. So at that point, I mentioned to Peter that I could hear in my mind, I could hear Jim wishing I were gone while he was using that fake EpiPen on my left leg. I've said that in the previous episodes, in parts 23. So I popped in one more question to Spirit about Father's Day. Jim's harried, hour-late arrival to the ER, how he was so frantic. So I shared with Spirit my concerns about Jim's cockamamie story about the firefighters returning to our house to retrieve equipment they'd forgotten. And I asked, did Jim lie about that detail, that whole story? What was it about? So Jim's higher self answered in the affirmative, saying he did it to cover up something else he had done. Although Jim's higher self didn't answer more fully what that thing was that Jim had done, unfortunately. So then Peter asked me if I've ever witnessed Jim burning papers, and I said I hadn't. That didn't land. I didn't know. He probably did it when I was away from home. My higher self then said that after I'm financially separated from Jim, he'll behave even more strangely. The papers he is seen burning that is being shown to Peter will have to do with something he did in his past while he was an active duty cop. I was told he did very, very bad things as a cop and has never, ever been held accountable, not even suspected of any of it. Peter continued the reading, saying that my higher self has talked about lawyers involved with future legal matters, maybe our divorce, but the attorneys are going to notice some very strange paperwork that Jim is going to submit. So these papers that my higher self is telling Peter about that belong to Jim, they are from some kind of a financial fraud activity or other kind of illegal activity, and Jim is burning those papers. So I'm thinking they must be from like the 90s, before computers, because Jim was a cop from 1990 through the middle of 2017. So it's probably old stuff. My higher self warned me to keep all of my vital documents with me because Jim will go haywire burning stuff, perhaps maybe August or September. She also said that Jim was trying desperately to cover up something horrible he did as a cop. He's terrified of people finding this thing out. And she sees him burning a hard drive with a lot of illegal corn on it. So as the reading came to a close, Peter said he sees in the near future reports of Jim's secret activities coming to light, that some of the things will take me by surprise, others are pretty bad. And he said there is something that I will hear that is going to cut me to my core. My higher self warned me to allow the legal side, meaning the people doing the investigations, to expose Jim as a criminal, saying that lawyers are also going to look into Jim and his finances, prompted by those suspicious documents that he submits. Now, Peter says that Jim also has hidden money, stolen money that he keeps in a lockbox, but it's not stored at our house, it's somewhere else. Peter said it's not a lot of money, a few $1,000s, and that it's from illegal activity Jim participates in, and for me not to worry about it. Don't even worry about it. I told Peter it felt like we needed another reading soon, one only and all about Jim's criminal activities, because it felt like that was a really deep well. As it turned out, we met for another phone reading in a week's time, then once again in each of the months of August, September, and November down the road. So my higher self has validated everything I've been sensing about Jim when around him lately, especially while traveling with him recently in June to California and back, and on the day he tried to take my life by poison and make it look like a food allergy. So she assured me that those things are real, that what I'm sensing about him that he's trying to do and trying to hide is real. And then my noni popped in again at the end to remind me that I have very strong psychic gifts, as do all four of my daughters, as did my own mother, and that we inherit these gifts from her Italian matrilineage. So that's the mother's genetic lineage. We've inherited great things. And this is where the reading ends. Thank you for being here for all parts 28, A through D. That was a long reading. And I hope you stay tuned for part 29, because guess what? It's another reading with Peter, but it's shorter and sweeter. It takes place just a week after this big reading. So in my first 10 days in California, I get 2 readings with Peter, and we had a lot to talk about. And believe me when I say Spirit opens the floodgates. Ever since I leave Jim, the readings are more intense, more informative, and sometimes more shocking. They're just heavier too. However, in part 29, it's a light reading. It's very loving, nurturing. And my mother and I, she's the main speaker in that reading. We healed decades of mother-daughter trauma in that one session. I hope you'll join me for part 29. I'm Sarah Wilder, and this is Surviving the Man I Married.